Conversation on the Franklin County Sheriff's Office new body-worn cameras and the policies governing their use. My name is Brittany Razik, and I am the clerk to the Board of Commissioners. As we get started, I'd like to take you through the rules of decorum and expectations for this public meeting. As we've said, this is a public forum. Anyone may speak, but there are some rules that we'll ask you to follow. The same expectations apply for residents who are here with us in person and for those joining us virtually. First, we've got a short agenda, and then we'll open it up for discussion and questions. If you're here in person and would like to speak, please fill out a speaker slip, which you can find on the table on the side of the room, and give that to a staff person in the back of the room. I will call on you in the order that I receive your speaker slips. If you're online and would like to speak, please use the raise your hand function in Zoom on the bottom of the screen, and I will call on you in the order I see your hand. We'll alternate between in-person speakers and virtual speakers. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. Please be considerate of other speakers and limit your comments to the length so that we can get to everybody. I will time each speaker and give you a 1-minute warning and then let you know when your time is up. Please limit your comments to the topic on the new body-worn cameras and do not use profanity, and make sure your language and comments are appropriate for this public setting. Thank you in advance for your cooperation and your interest in this important topic. And now I'll turn it over to Madam President Crawley.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you to everyone who is joining us in person and everyone who is joining us online through Facebook. It has been a long time coming to have this conversation on body-worn cameras. I'm glad that my colleagues and the sheriff and staff have made themselves available to really engage with our neighbors in Franklin County on accountability, transparency, and how these body cameras will work to protect our law enforcement as well as our community members. As the sheriff's office starts rolling out the body cameras to patrol officers and then others, it really is important for us to make sure that our community has buy-in and understand why this is necessary, and understand how the cameras will work and the policy and procedures that went into this and how we got to where we are today. And then you get to also hear from my colleagues and I on our continued commitment to make sure that the sheriff's office has access to updated data or anything else that needs to go into making sure that this equipment runs smoothly and that they have what they need. I do want to acknowledge that my colleague, Commissioner O'Grady, is not here presently, but he is online. And so with that, I won't take up too much time. I will kick it off to my colleague, Kevin Boyce, if he has any remarks, and then the sheriff.
I don't know if I've got some prepared bullet points to read or not, but I don't need them for this. I want to thank you all for coming out today and joining us, and those of you who've joined us online. We appreciate and value your input beyond measure. I want to say to the public, we are evolving as a county. Most of you have read all of the statistics about the fact that we are expected to grow by over 1 million people over the next 20 years. And with that growth comes a lot of changes, and a lot of changes in our policies and how we deliver our services best we can. And embedded in that is better law enforcement, better social service resources, better economic development efforts. And so this is one but of a puzzle, a mosaic of things that we're doing to work to make our delivery of service better. And so we're so excited to do that. And I think the last part I'll add is that I want to thank the sheriff for his leadership and his patience in the process. This was not a simple or easy policy discussion and change and development. It is complex for various reasons, but it takes real courage and leadership. And I wanted to acknowledge and say that you've been a very genuine spirit to work with, even when we didn't see everything exactly the same. I think it's your spirit of wanting to figure it out that I admire the most, and I want to thank you. I know we've got a ways to go, but I think I'm certain I can say I see all of our friends from law enforcement here. I'm certain I can say that our sole purpose with body cameras is to just do a better job in general in protecting, first and foremost, our folks in law enforcement who wake up every day and try to protect us, and also serve our public the best we can, and deliver the highest level of confidence in that service delivery. And so I'm looking forward to, at the last part of this, is to hear from the public and get your insight and input. We don't have all the answers, and we don't always get it right, but we do our best to get to those points, and that's where your input and your feedback will come into handy. We've got a lot that we're doing, and I see that their product is here today to demonstrate. We'll go forward and hopefully learn as we go, and when we do, we'll make those adjustments in that learning and educational process. So thank you so much, Madam President, for your leadership and guidance here.
Absolutely, thank you. Turn off my mic. Thank you. And Sheriff Baldwin, give some remarks.
Thank you, Madam President and Commissioners. I want to start off the evening by just thanking everybody who's in attendance virtually and in person. Tonight's really a significant night. It's a milestone for the Sheriff's Office. We would not be here if it wasn't for the partnership and the support of the County Commissioners, County Administration, Ken Wilson and Chris Long. I think Chris is in the audience. Also the Data Center, Prosecutor's Office, and our own personnel within the Sheriff's Office. Tonight, like Commissioner Boyd said, it's about transparency. It's about being accountable to the public. It's about being protecting the public, protecting our deputies, and just showing what happens. Cameras are another tool that help get us to that point. They record evidence, they record what happened at a scene. They're a very, very useful tool, and nowadays in law enforcement, a very necessary tool. It's been a while getting here. These conversations started a couple of years ago. It's been a lot of work, a lot of discussion, and as Commissioner Boyd said, sometimes spirited, but all necessary to provide the best service we can to the public, and that's what this is all about. We work for the public. Our mission is public safety, and just to do our job the best way we can for everybody out there is what this is all about. So again, I would really like to thank you for being here tonight. The cameras are here, the equipment, our policies, everything is here for you to talk about, and that's what this town hall meeting is really about. I would like to, with your permission, turn this over to my chief deputy, Jim Gilbert. He runs our patrol division within the Sheriff's Office. Jim is probably one of the most knowledgeable people about the body-worn cameras. A couple of years ago when we started this project, Jim took on the project, talking with other agencies, seeing how their cameras operated, the policies they operated by. And I would like for him to go ahead and speak about how they operate and just kind of do a demonstration for you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, Commissioners, for this opportunity, as well as the public. I'm Chief Gilbert. I operate the Patrol Bureau on behalf of Sheriff Baldwin. The Patrol Bureau is going to be the first area where the body-worn cameras are rolled out. We will start a pilot project with 30 cameras working through that pilot project so that we can better understand the technology as it relates to how they will upload changes that may need to be made regarding how they operate. But what I want to show you right now is how the camera actually works, and then we actually have a video that we'd like to display for those that are in attendance as well as online that will better explain the camera. But for right now, I'm going to move out to the center. Is that the best, or should I just stay here? I think I'll just stay here.
Chief, if you could just raise it up a little bit,
Okay.
I think that would be helpful.
So the body-worn camera is worn on a magnetic clip that holds up to 90 pounds of pressure. That's an enhancement that the company WatchGuard has made due to it potentially getting knocked off, being moved around. But basically, the body camera is on right now. Deputies will power it on when they mark in service and when they're on duty, whether that's at the substation or in a situation with like our canine units and some supervisors that have assigned vehicles. As they mark in service, as they put their uniform on, the yellow light indicates that it is on and is in standby mode, and it's on. To activate, you press it once, and you'll hear an audible beep and then a red light across the top for the deputy so that he can look down and know that it's on, as well as a red light that's on the front. So every citizen encounter we have, every citizen will visibly see on a Franklin County Sheriff's deputy the body-worn camera worn on the front of the uniform. And in some situations, we have deputies that wear outer vests. The body-worn camera will be worn on the outer vest. So red light on means it's recording. To turn it off, you click it twice and it goes back to green light, which is in standby mode, so that it can be activated. The important thing about the body-worn camera as it relates to specifically patrol is that we operate marked cars that also have cameras in the in-car. This will sync just like your phone does and paired with your car when you get in your car. Many of us use that application on our car where our phone Bluetooth works through the vehicle. This will also pair with the cruiser so that when a deputy activates his emergency lights or sirens, the body camera will automatically come on. That's one less thing they have to do as they get out of the car if they're responding to an emergency in which they utilize their lights or their sirens on an emergency that they're responding to. I'll answer more questions here, but if we go to the video right now and show the actual online as well as in person.
I'm Chief Jim Gilbert of the Patrol Bureau. The V300 body camera will be clearly visible on the uniform of a deputy sheriff. Some of our deputies wear an outer carrier. You can clearly see the camera is still very visible. Upon interacting with a member of the public, the body-worn camera will be activated by the deputy. This is the view of the camera during an activation.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Good. Anything I can help you with? Hello, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Anything I can help you with? Hello, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Good. Anything I can help you with?
You'll know the camera is recording. There is a red light. In the event a deputy fails to activate the camera, there is a look-back feature with audio and video. Hopefully you found this information to be very helpful and useful. We are confident that the body-worn camera program will help show transparency for our office, as well as keep the deputies and our community members safe. Thank you.
One of the things that I also like to point out, what's unique to this type of body camera that we went with was the availability to take an old battery off and put a new battery on. The reason this is important is if a deputy is working extended hours or is working an assignment, a special duty assignment after work, is the availability to switch the battery out so that can quickly be done and a new battery put on and they're ready to go with more battery life for the camera. It is our intent and our hope that we have body cameras on at all times so that we can capture any incident, whether it be very minor to something very significant, being a critical incident, so that for the deputies' use as well as for the public's use, that we have transparency as we interact with members of the public. So for any interaction that we have with the public, the body camera will be activated by the deputy.
Thank you so much, Chief Gilbert. Next, I'd like to turn it over to County Administrator Wilson.
Thank you, Clerk. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to highlight the process of getting to this point in the implementation stage. From the time funds were first allocated in December of 2020 for this project, a team of dedicated county officials led by county administration, Franklin County Sheriff's Office, the county prosecutor's office, purchasing, the county's Office of Management and Budget, the data center, and our fleet management department has worked tirelessly to get us to where we had a contract we brought forward in February, totaling approximately $2.5 million. Almost without exception, there have been bi-weekly meetings that dated back to January of 2021 with a total focus on getting us to the point of implementation. I will note that the process has been long, but the work has been consistent because we've had an overarching goal to get the body-worn camera system implemented in the correct fashion. I would like to, again tonight, thank the Board of Commissioners and the Sheriff's Office and the Sheriff for reaching a consensus on a body-worn camera policy that is grounded in accountability and transparency, that balances the interests of the men and women in uniform and the 1.3 million residents of Franklin County. The primary purpose of body-worn cameras, of course, is to improve evidence collection, to strengthen the deputies' performance in the field, to use this video to improve employee training, document encounters between law enforcement and the public, to investigate criminal activity, resolve resident complaints and other deputy-involved incidents. This evening is the first community conversation designed to allow the residents of Franklin County the opportunity to learn more about the body-worn camera system and its accompanying policy. I will now turn things over to Sheriff Dallas Baldwin to lead us further into this evening's presentation.
Thank you, County Administrator Ken Wilson. Appreciate it. Appreciate the comments. I don't know if you have copies or not, but a policy, of course, accompanies the body-worn cameras. Policy is very important. I mean, it guides how we wear them, what we do with them, and it protects the public and the deputies. If you have a copy of it, and I'll just briefly go through this, of course, it's full of definitions. I think it's very important to state that our policy is very similar to other agencies within the county. And to me, that's vitally important because you as a resident of the county or traveling through, if you encounter law enforcement and they're wearing a body-worn camera, I think you have the right to expect that no matter who you're encountering in law enforcement, our policies and procedures are pretty similar. That's only fair to you, that you're not being guided by different rules and wherever you go to. So this is a very consistent policy with other agencies. As Ken Wilson pointed out, they collect photographic evidence. They're used to document interactions with the public, document our own activities, which are used for training, for a lot of legal purposes, a lot of uses for the camera. Each deputy within the sheriff's office that is certified to carry a weapon will be issued a body-worn camera. Now, the policy will guide when they have those cameras on and off, but every deputy authorized to carry a weapon will have that camera with them. The recordings, and I might add that when the cameras are turned on, very basically, when there's an interaction with the public, the cameras are on. Anytime a deputy gets out of the car, if they're on a dispatch run, the camera will come on, whether it's an alarm or domestic disturbance, an accident, something of that sort. The cameras are on, but anytime there's interaction with the public, that camera is to be on with very, very few exceptions. The camera, like I said, is part of the issued equipment. They will take them home with them for the most part. They'll have a couple of batteries to make sure they never run out of power. Very few exceptions as to when the body-worn camera will go off. There are certain times, whether you're talking to a victim of a crime, a witness, maybe an attorney, or for some privacy interests, restroom, things like that. There are times where the camera will actually be powered off, not to record that. But for the most part, without about the 4 exceptions, that camera will be on all the time. And Chief Gilbert mentioned earlier that there's a couple of features on the camera that are actually very important. One is a look-back period, which is a brief period of time which the deputy would have the ability, or a supervisor or a member of the commissioners, they can look back for a few minutes and see what occurred prior to that camera being activated. And that can be very important in law enforcement to see what you might have just missed. An additional look-back period called record after the fact is vitally important, and the first period I mentioned is brief. That second period lasts almost 2 days. So if something occurs while that camera's powered on but not activated, we haven't lost anything. We're able to go back and recapture that on audio and video and see what transpired. So those are 2 very, very important features of this camera. Again, the policy all in all, I mean, like I said, it's very similar. I don't want to take up a whole lot of time. They're available. The policy is available online. So if you want to, I don't know if we have copies here or not, we may, but grab a copy. I think they're back here on the desk. And get a copy of the policy and just see. If you have questions, be sure and ask us what those questions are. But again, anytime there's contact with the public, the cameras are to be on. With, again, like I said, very, very few exceptions. Undercover operations would probably be an exception to that for safety. But otherwise, you can expect to see them on. There's a record retention schedule that will be in effect here very soon. Public records requests are available, but they're all spelled out in the policy.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
So next, we will move into the question and answer portion. And as I stated earlier, for the rules of decorum, I will go over some of the rules again. And so, first, the same expectations for both residents who are in person with us and joining us virtually and on Zoom. If you are in person and would like to speak, please fill out a speaker slip. If you have not done so already, which you can find on the table on the side of the room, and you can give to a staff person in the back, and I will call you in the order in which they are brought up to me. If you are online and would like to speak, please use the raise your hand function on Zoom at the bottom of your screen at this time, and I will call on you in the order in which I see your hand raised. We'll alternate between in-person speakers and virtual speakers. So prior to a virtual participant speaking, we will promote you to a panelist in the webinar, so you may do so. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak, so please be considerate of others and limit your comments to that length so we can get to everyone. I will time each speaker and give you a 1-minute warning and let you know when your time is up. Please limit your comments to the topics of the new body-worn cameras and do not use profanity, and make sure that your language and comments are appropriate for this public setting.
Hey, Brittany, it's Commissioner O'Grady.
Hi, Commissioner. Go ahead.
How are you this evening?
Doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm all right. Would you mind if I were to ask the first question of Sheriff Baldwin?
Absolutely.
And there's a couple quick questions, but I thought it would set the tone maybe a little bit, if that's okay.
That's great. Go ahead whenever you're
Sheriff,
ready.
how are you tonight, Sheriff?
Doing great, Commissioner. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing quite well, thank you. Sorry for not being there in person tonight, but I am here. Wanted to ask a couple things. It's a couple part question, but I'll ask it all at once. First, I guess I would ask you, one, how long have you been asking for body-worn cameras, number one? Number two, how long have we been between the commissioners and commissioner staff and the sheriff's staff, how long have we been discussing body-worn cameras and body-worn camera policy? That's the second part of the question. The third part of the question is, have those conversations always been, have they always been cordial, or have they been contentious? Were those negotiations, did we finally get to a place where, even when conversations amongst your staff and our staff, yourself and ourselves, when they weren't always, I guess describe that a little bit if you could, please, for the benefit of the folks that are listening in and calling in tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Grady, and actually thank you for bringing that up. This, I think day one when I came in the office, the county administrator, Ken Wilson, asked me about body cameras, what my position was. And at that time, of course, I wanted body cameras, but coming into office brand new and in the middle of the budget stream, of course, they were not in the budget at that time. So the conversation went on mild. It really took off in around November of 2019. I think that's when I talked to Chief Gilbert and said, we really need to push this body camera agenda. And Jim took the project on at that time. I reached out to other agencies and their policies, and we began getting a lot of information. He actually wrote a few policies at the time. We got a lot of quotes on what it would cost, the numbers of cameras we needed at that time, and kind of designed a pilot project. And then, of course, COVID hit, and that kind of put everything on the back burner for a while. But then as COVID hit, as the protests of 20 hit, we knew this was more important. And we'd already done the budget cycle. We knew we were going to take a hit on the budget. We weren't sure that that was the right time to request them because of the budget hit. But safety was much more important. Community trust was much more important. So we presented a request to county administration. He completely was on board with it. At that point, we began, it was around that time, I believe, Ken, that we developed the committee. We decided not to do this as a sheriff's office. We decided this was so important for the community that a committee was formed. And I did not lead the committee. We left that really up to sheriff's office personnel, prosecutor's office, data center, county administration. And they began a series of pretty intense meetings on finding out which cameras to buy, which was the best product for us. And then the policy kicked in. And as Commissioner O'Grady alluded to, they were cordial. I mean, we were respectful of each other, but we did not agree all the time. We had some pretty heated discussions because we all had an interest. We had the same interest, but we had it from different perspectives. And there became, in my mind, some legal questions about who owned the videos, how they were restored, released, and all those. And they had to be asked because, not for our own self-interest, but for the right of the public, because ultimately they belong to the public, and we wanted to make sure that they were being housed and treated the proper way. There were many, many meetings, we had many executive sessions where we had to iron out differences. So it was quite a lengthy process, but it has been ongoing in high gear since November of 19, and then it really took off around the end of the summer in 2020. And at that point, I mean, it's just been nonstop to this point. Commissioner, does that answer your question?
Thank you, Sheriff. It does. I just wanted you to be able to illustrate in your words and from your perspective what we've been going through for some time, and the fact that it has not always been. I wouldn't say it's ever been too contentious, but it certainly has not always been. It has not always been. Lilacs and roses. We've had our disagreements, we've had our differences. We have, we've parted ways on issues on several occasions, only to come back to the table and make agreements and make sure that we move this issue forward for the betterment of the residents of Franklin County. So, but it's been a lengthy process with a lot of people at the table, a lot of differences of opinion, a lot of negotiation. So I will step back now. I just wanted to throw that out there at the beginning. I know there's probably plenty of people who have lots of questions. So sorry for taking some time.
Thank you for your question, Commissioner. While we do wait for a few folks to submit some speaker slips, I would like to turn it over to Madam President, Commissioner Boyce, or again, you, Commissioner O'Grady, if you have anything you'd like to add, or Administrator Wilson.
Yeah, I have 3 questions initially. 2 of them are for Chief Gilbert, if you don't mind. One, I just looking at the cameras from here, and it really makes me realize I need glasses. But it says, I think there's numbers on the back of these. So will the deputies be assigned, number 10, would you would always have number 10, or is just that for record keeping? How would we assign those?
Absolutely, good question. What you have in front of you is the demo cameras from WatchGuard, and those folks are here. But once our pilot starts with the first 30 we're getting, those will be permanently assigned, and then every camera after that will be permanently assigned to a deputy. So similar to what the sheriff said about our weapon, our radio, our taser, the body camera will be an intricate part of issued equipment that must be worn and brought to work every day by that deputy, and that deputy keeps and maintains that camera assigned to them. At the end of the shift, they will dock, which basically means they will take the camera off their uniform and place it in exactly what you see here on the front table. And then the process will take place from an IT perspective from there to automatically upload. So once that uploading takes place, they take the camera off when it's done uploading, and they put it back on their uniform for the next shift, for when they're leaving or when they will be working again.
Perfect. That I appreciate that. That leads me to my second question about especially the patrol officers and docking. So if I'm a patrol officer, I don't have to, I'm assuming you don't go back to the station every night. I don't know, you might, but I have my own docking station, or do I have to come back to, can I go home and dock it, or do I have to go back to the station and every night and put it down to upload data?
So each deputy will be eventually issued an extra battery and a charger. However, the actual uploading does take place at the substation.
Oh, okay.
And we have remote locations throughout the county in which deputies work out of. A perfect example would be down in Hamilton Township. That's where our next meeting will be, or one of the next meetings that we have, town hall meetings. we will, because we will have to, IT will have to set up so that when the cruiser is brought back there, the deputy will walk in the substation there and then go ahead and download. So eventually, I think WatchGuard and the technology and those folks are here will be where it'll automatically upload to the cloud so that an officer or deputy does not have to come in to actually dock it once they're back in a remote location. The current in-car system works so that when the patrol cruiser pulls into the substation, nothing takes place, and it wirelessly, through an antenna on the outside of the building, it uploads, and it's uploaded into the evidence locker, and it's uploaded to the iCloud from there. Hopefully the technology soon will be there so that the body-worn camera, the same will take place so that they don't have to physically go in, but if they're in the parking lot where the outside antenna outside the building will allow it to upload.
So is the thought that every evening the data will be uploaded?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then my last question for right now, and then I don't want to hog up all the time. I don't know if my colleague has one. So whoever can answer, why WatchGuard versus any other vendor that may have been out there? Why were they? How are they the best? Are they state of the art? Why WatchGuard?
We
Well,
put.
I'm sure WatchGuard can be like, why not WatchGuard? But
Yeah, that's in regards to the process that took place. And
Commissioner, I think our purchasing director is here and can probably address that.
Good evening, everyone. Thank
Good
you,
evening.
Commissioner, for your question. So the committee that was formed, that's been discussed, we took quite a bit of time to intentionally create what's called a request for information, an RFI. And we posted that. We sent that notice that was posted to nearly 80 vendors to respond to. That RFI included a series of questions, several dozen questions, so that we could get information as far as the business themselves, as far as the functional capability of the equipment. And then once we received all of that, we had the members of the sheriff's office and other members of the committee do a full evaluation of those. There were certain criteria that were important to the sheriff's department. And after a full assessment of that, it was determined that Motorola WatchGuard really met the criteria that they were looking for. They did have a contract under Sourcewell, which is a cooperative. Therefore, the county was able, due to our authority given to us under Ohio Revised Code 9.48, we're able to, outside of a competitive process, procure from that particular contract. So that led us into the contract that we arrived at.
Okay. Thank you. I think it was necessary for the public to hear how you got to WatchGuard, so I
Sure.
appreciate that. And thank you, Chief Gilbert, for answering my questions as well. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Madam President, may I?
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
thank you. So I want to talk about the policy a little bit, and I think that's really what we're interested in hearing from the public. I think, the cameras are just one element of technology, but it's really about the application of the technology that's important and what the law is around it. And so I'm curious as to when you record when the camera records data, that data is, I guess it's maybe for the prosecutor's office maybe, that data is considered a public record and meets all of the legal elements of what a public record is, which means it's available to the public. Correct? Is that correct?
Commissioner Boyce, that is correct. The legislature actually took a step further and when an amended public records law to directly address body-worn camera footage and laid out what is considered an exception to what is contained on that footage and what is a straight-out public record that is required to be released.
And I think that's where I was going with the exceptions, So if a deputy sheriff inadvertently records something that is not a policy-oriented recording scenario, say going to the restroom, something, that record is that an exemption? That and moreover, what I'm really thinking of is when maybe the camera picks up personal effects in someone's house that aren't necessary, or maybe sensitive information like a social security number or whatnot. Are those type of things public records, and how can we, do we have the ability to jettison that from the record?
The sheriff's office is very much aware of those exceptions. As you've defined various examples, they would not meet the definition of public record. So if I ask for the footage of Deputy John Doe's camera on May the 26th, and what we would do is we would gather that footage, we'd review that footage, the sheriff's office would redact that footage that is not meeting the definitions of public record or meets the exceptions of what is required to be redacted under the public records law. And then that footage would be released to the public. It's important to note that sheriff's office always has a right to send that footage to the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office to conduct further legal review. So, for example, if there is a point in the footage where they're not sure it meets the exception, but they want to understand, they want to make sure they're not violating public records laws, they have a right to send it to our office for legal review. We would review the record and send back to the sheriff's office our opinion regarding whether or not that meets the definition or the exception of what could or could not be released. That goes on routinely from every county agencies in order to properly address public records requests, not just for body cams, but for any record that is the people's records.
And then how long do we have to keep
I
the
was gonna
record? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. That was
Yeah, how long are we required to store the data? If the sheriff stops someone and it's a routine, stop, they went their red light or something and get a ticket. They know they went to the red light, they come down, pay it, deal with the fine or whatever, and move on. How long do we have to keep that data? And then maybe even data that's collected on those cameras that there isn't a ticket or a fine to it, it's just data. It's just, a time that was supposed to be on and reported data. What's our requirement there?
So there are a few different areas that control that. The first and foremost is the Records Commission controls your record schedule for every county office. And as you know, as a member of the Records Commission, every so many months review those records retention schedules to determine whether to update it or not. This particular body cam footage will be added to the sheriff's record retention schedule. And in that, it will have a standard time period to keep the record. But it will have a number of exceptions to that. For instance, it will say body cam footage is to be kept for 90 days unless there is a pending court matter or there is a public record request, so there'll be a list of exceptions related to the nature of the record that allows to make sure that we aren't destroying a record or getting rid of a record that the public should have or we need to have in order to administer justice needed for pending cases.
Okay.
And at this time, we still do not have any participants that have submitted a speaker slip, so I would welcome any other comments from either the sheriff or commissioners, county administrator.
Madam President, if I may. One area I would like to talk about on the videos is the security, and actually from our data center, Adam Frumpkin's in the audience, you may want to weigh in on this. But once the recording is made by the deputies do not have the access to go in and alter those recordings. And sometimes that's a concern about who houses, where is it maintained, who can access it, what can happen with that. All the videos that are created will always be retained in their original format. They'll never be distorted by anybody from the sheriff's office. They might be redacted, as the prosecutor just said, for certain reasons on a request. But our deputies do not have the ability to go in and make any alterations. None of us, we can't do that. and we don't want to. These videos, as I think Chief Gilbert mentioned earlier, will go to the cloud. And ultimately, they will go from the camera to the cloud, be stored, and we have no access to that. But I thought it was important to mention that they are very secure.
I would just say before, I know you got a speaker slip, and I didn't know if Director Fromkin wanted to speak to anything that regarding data or technology, but I wanted to give him, sorry to put you on the spot, but also, didn't know if you had anything that you wanted to add that you felt like was pertinent to the conversation. So no pressure. Just wanted to make sure I opened up the floor to you, though.
I would only go ahead and confirm exactly what Sheriff Baldwin stated, that the data will be stored. It's stored in its original format. Even when there's a redaction that's done, the original format is still held. The redaction creates a secondary file from that. So if at any point someone questions something, we still have the original, which then can be reviewed and by the prosecuting attorney's office with the sheriff's department to validate anything that may have happened or in the redaction process. So there is always going to be the original format of that file or that data kept. That's the only thing I'd like to.
No, I think that's awesome. We needed to know that. Thank you. Madam Clerk, I know you have a speaker slip.
Thank you, Madam President. I would welcome up Pastor Jeffrey Key. Yes, that's correct. You can come up to the podium. Thank you. And Pastor Key, I will begin your time as soon as you begin speaking.
I just want to say thank you for this moment. This is a colossal moment for many. I'm the co-leader of something called ARC, Air Religious Coalition. I've been the pastor of where I serve, New Faith Baptist Church on Oak Street, for over 32 years. There has been a major divide between policing and our community, and this certainly is a testament of trying to bridge that. We see how important this is when we look at the playback with Andre Hill, and then we see how important this is of a colossal proportion as well when we look at Jason Meade and Casey Goodson, how there's nothing there. So just want to say that this is really great for our community. I'm in constant contact with the sheriff, and I also would like to sort of reiterate what Commissioner Boyce has said. The genuine conversations that we had that have been a struggle. We met being a part of the Mayor's Advisory Commission for the new police chief. And one day we decided in our dialogues, which were not always on the same page, but he said to me one day, what I'll never forget, he said, I think it would be better that we talk down here and walk together down here than we get to the pearly gates, and then God says, why didn't we work on these issues together? So I just want to say to Sheriff Dallas Baldwin and to all of you, this is really good subsequent to what we've seen coming into our city, boom, 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 right? Commissioner Boyce, you were even a part of some things we were able to see because of body cams. So I simply want to say, long overdue, but we're grateful. So I speak on behalf of, again, the religious leaders that the body I'm connected to, and also as a leader in our community and someone who's engaged at the forefront of police reform for the city, and just want to say that this is long overdue, and we're grateful that it's here now. So thank you very much. Thank all of you.
If I could, Madam President, if I could just say to Pastor Key too, I think part of this process, I think, in almost 25 years of being in public service, what I know for sure is that when new policies take shape in institutions like Franklin County, they work best when there are liaisons to the public like yourself to help spread the word and share information. Sometimes when it comes from us, we're seen as the 373 South High Street, and like we only want to protect that interest. But in the reality is I understand that perspective from the public. And so I just want to encourage you to continue to be an ambassador for us of information and sharing that And we are willing to, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the sheriff, but my experience with him has been that he's always willing to learn and listen and grow from the conversation. And I think you just really can't ask for more than that. And so we welcome that from the public, even if it's not today. I know sometimes it's everyone doesn't like doing public speaking, but we want to hear from you. And I think the sheriff. Again, I don't want to speak for you, but I know the purpose of us being here is that as we go over the next year or so, if there's something in the policy that we didn't think of, or something that we just overlooked, or we need to adjust, or there's new technology, we're willing to hear that and I think make the policy adjustments. It should be noted that, the sheriff's office, they don't need the commissioners to apply policy, but they work very willingly with us, because I think the idea is that we want to deliver a service that's in everyone's interest. And so I know the prosecutor's office have been very engaged in, they're engaged in everything at Franklin County, quite frankly. But they're, as they should be, I might add. And so, again, I just want to encourage the public that even if it's not today, to share with us your thoughts. If you interact with the deputy sheriff out there and there's something an idea or thought that you want us to consider, please share that with us.
Before you go, I have another question before you make some remarks, and if there are other people who have questions, feel free. But I want to say and I think Commissioner O'Grady was getting to that when he first asked his questions, but I really want to underscore our administration and the sheriff and his team and the prosecutor's office in always coming back to the table, even when there was hard discussions. It's easy, and you hear about discussions all across the country where things fall apart and people go to their corners, and it takes a long time to come back to the table. But those conversations, even before I got here and when I came here, discussions would be contentious, and then there'd be another meeting, and folks would come back to the table. And I think, to your point, Pastor Key, the goal has always been, we know that there's issues with trust with the community and law enforcement, but there was a willingness always to try to forge ahead, knowing how critical it is to start building trust and finding those paths forward. And this isn't an end-all, be-all. Like, this is one step. This is one puzzle piece to a larger portrait. And so I wanted to underscore that. The question that I have, since Chief Gilbert mentioned critical incident, and I know it came up in discussions, and I think it came up also when we did the resolution. If you would be willing to, or Sheriff, I'm sorry, if you want to define what a critical incident is for those who may be in here and watching.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. And that's very important. We have, in the policy, you'll see a significant event, and it's kind of defined as any incident involving a deputy that would likely or would be result in heightened media attention, which could be about anything. But in a nutshell, it's just anything that's out of the ordinary, which would bring attention. We're going to term it a significant event. And the reason that is important, the routine public records request will come to the sheriff's office. We will take that, we'll look at the video, we'll redact if appropriate, and it goes out if it is not significant. Anything that rises to that level, we'll have a discussion with the prosecutor and make sure that they are on board with the release of that record. We don't want to do anything on our own that might not be appropriate, and so we formed a partnership with the prosecutor, and that's why that terminology is in there. Anything that would be more than very routine, heightened interest by the media or by the community. It doesn't really have to be the media, but anything that would bring additional attention or questions, then that would be subject to conversation with the prosecutor.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
I just want to have a reminder for all the folks online. I know more people have joined on the Zoom webinar. If you would like to speak, to please use the raise your hand function on the bottom part of the Zoom screen. We'll give folks just a minute to see if they would like to speak before we move towards the end of our meeting here. Okay, at this time, I would like to invite any additional questions that it can include from the press or the media that are here, if they would like to speak at this time. If you would like, you could, sir, if you could come up to the podium so,
Yeah.
to speak into the microphone. And then if you could also state your name, please.
Yeah, hey, it's Colbert. So I'm with the Columbus Dispatch. I was just wondering, where is the cloud storage? Is it the company's cloud storage, or is it the county's cloud storage?
Mr. Frumkin.
It's like I'm vibrating, it's like an echo. Kenneth Wilson, County Administrator. Included in the contract with Motorola WatchGuard is essentially a lease of the cloud storage, which we'll be uploading to. And we don't have limits on that amount of cloud storage that we will use.
So there's unlimited storage?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And so if there are no further questions from the media or anybody else present, I would turn it over to you, Madam President, and the Commissioners, County Administration, and the Sheriff for closing remarks.
I'm sorry. I just want to say as we wrap up, I encourage folks who are at home to send in feedback and questions that occur to them later on to a dedicated email. It's at questions@franklincounty.ohio.gov.
Thank you, Madam President. I do want to remind everybody that the next body-worn camera community conversation will be hosted by the Franklin County Sheriff and the Board of Commissioners on Monday, July 18th, from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. at the Hamilton Township Community Room at 6400 Lockbourne Road, and that's 43207. And that, if there's no further business before the board and the sheriff, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody, and have a good evening.